Hello everyone, my name is Camila Cabedone Villegas. I'm a student at Sam Houston State University and I'm very excited to be here today to talk about an issue that has a great impact in our lives, especially as young adults making our way through an increasingly complex world. That is misinformation and disinformation in politics. In today's world, where information is a click away 24/7, it can feel both very empowering and incredibly overwhelming. But what I want to transmit with you today is the ability to identify fact from fiction in the digital world. I'll be going over how misinformation and disinformation affect our political landscape and how we can respond to these challenges. We'll also be going over some key terms, the topic's importance in politics, some strategies, and finally the conclusion. My ultimate goal today is to ignite critical thinking questions and help us understand the kind of information we consume and share daily. So let's dive in. We'll start by defining some terms. Misinformation is the false information that is spread regardless of the intent to mislead. It is the combination of the prefix mis, that means wrong or mistaken, and the word information. On the other hand, we have disinformation, which is generally known as deliberately misleading or biased information, manipulated narrative or facts, and or propaganda. It is the combination of the word information and the prefix dis, which is used to indicate a reversal or negative instance of the word that follows, like disrespect or disobedience. So why is it important to know these terms? And how can we recognize the difference between the two? Well, I'm very glad you asked. The main distinction to be able to identify the difference between disinformation and misinformation is to understand the intention that is used to spread the information. This picture right here reflects the idea better. So misinformation is when you think something is true and you share it, but it actually isn't. Disinformation is when you're certain that something isn't true, but you share it anyways because you want to deliberately cause harm by spreading the wrong information. There are multiple reasons why making this distinction is useful. First, being able to identify misinformation from disinformation is useful to detect when someone or something is mistaken. This will help you identify the source's motivation. Second, it helps us find and differentiate credible and reliable resources from propaganda. This is especially important when conducting academic research. And lastly, it encourages us to think critically about the information we receive. As I said before, information is always available to us, so it might become a little bit of our routine to absorb it without thinking who wrote it, why did they write it, and what credentials provide them with this knowledge. So here's where I take you a little deeper into how misinformation and disinformation are relevant to politics. As I was conducting my research, I encountered the importance that social media has when we talk about the spread of disinformation, as well as the pandemic's impact on how people, but more specifically college students, share and comment on disinformation that they consider appropriate and interesting by simply liking it. During the pandemic, people created new spaces for communication, and these became essential tools for creating and disseminating fake news, misinformation, disinformation, hoaxes, and propaganda during the corona crisis. Experts believe there will be fundamental changes in the interpretation of information due to social media alone. Empirical research has repeatedly shown that an individual's confidence in false information can be built when the information confirms an individual's own pre-existing attitudes, beliefs, or hypotheses. And when false information confirms an individual's beliefs or attitudes, an individual's confidence in the false information grows. So in simple terms, we call this bias. Bias plays an important role when consuming and sharing any kind of information. Every single one of us has bias. I myself do. But we must recognize when our biases are conflicting with our logical thinking. According to experts, attitude, opinion, or emotional homogeneity are the main driving forces for the growth of any content in the media environment. And disinformation is most definitely not an exception. As students, we're encouraged, and even sometimes forced, to use social media on a daily basis for education and communication. And therefore, we're exposed to the risks of encountering conspiracy websites and disinformation creators. Experts also point out that disinformation on social media is growing very, very quickly, where our ability to judge the truth of what we see online decreases as the amount of content we consume increases. So basically, the more media we consume online, where the content is abundant, fast, and cheap, the more overwhelmed we become. This overload makes it harder to evaluate what's true or false. On social media, biased information often spreads and gains momentum because there are no barriers like distance, time, or cost that traditional media face, and traditional media being television, radio, newspapers, etc. Messages, whether they're true or false, can be easily shared, commented on, liked, or tagged in discussions, which not only increases their reach, but also encourages more audience engagement. Experts suggest that the main reasons why people create and share media content online include expressing their identity, boosting self esteem, feeling a sense of belonging, keeping up with trends, seeking attention, and staying connected with their peers. The use of social media in politics can vary. Some content is intentionally created to malign political figures. This damages the beliefs of the people as well as the security and democratic processes of a country. Studies have shown that disinformation users of political propaganda are often creative and more persistent with their content during election years. This kind of content is also referred to as fake news, which aims to discredit information that is both reliable and important to the public. So basically, the real news. Types of fake news include news satire, news parodies, news fabrication, photo manipulation, and propaganda. Some studies conclude that the main reason why people fall for false news is because of their failure to think critically. Libraries of higher education institutions are encouraged to formulate strategies and programs to encourage students to use library material to clearly identify bias and shine a light on the importance of recognizing what places are safer than others when verifying information. A recent study published by the Journal of Information Technology and Politics showed that more than half the students subjected to their research project reported being once deceived by fake news. Now, you may ask, how can we avoid deception? There have been nationwide attempts to combat the spread of disinformation and misinformation. The European Union, for example, launched the Eurobarometer against fake news and online disinformation to attempt to establish regulatory frameworks with active proposals to combat fake news, like groups of specialists, the creation of fact checkers, and the use of artificial intelligence. Although it had been proven successful, it has not been sufficiently effective to combat the misinformation crisis. I personally believe that we must take individual action in order to function and gain the ability to cooperate as a society. So, John Spencer provides a very nice strategy for identifying fake news online. The 5 C's of critical consuming, where C number 1 stands for context. Things like, when was the article written? Where does it come from? C number 2 is credibility. Do some research on your source and make sure that you understand and analyze its reputation and authority over the topic that you're researching. Ask questions like, does the author cite credible sources? Is the source known for its journalistic authority? C number 3 stands for construction. What composes the article? Does it have bias? Is it trying to sell you a product? Construct an idea. Is it opinion based? C number 4 stands for corroboration. Include lateral reading in your research to confirm the information that you're given by checking other credible sources, and make sure that your source is not the only one making the claim. Finally, C number 5 stands for compare. Find other sources that may have a different take on the topic and set them side by side to provide you with a bigger picture of what's happening. Another strategy I personally find very helpful is the strategy escape, where E stands for evidence. Make sure you understand where the information is coming from and if the facts hold up. S stands for source, verifying who wrote the information and who published it, if there are any funders or editors. C stands for context. This will help you analyze the bigger picture and consider if what you read represents the whole story. A stands for audience. Can you tell who the text is intended for? P stands for purpose. Find out the motivation of the author to create the information. And finally, E, which stands for execution. This last one will help you think about how the information is presented, if it has good grammar, if there are any ads or impacting images, etc. In conclusion, misinformation and disinformation are significant challenges in our digital world, especially as they influence politics and society. Understanding the difference between the two and recognizing the power of bias are critical steps toward combating these issues. Social media plays a central role in amplifying false information, and while institutional efforts to address this problem are important, they're simply not enough. It's up to each and every one of us to think critically, evaluate sources, and make informed decisions about what we consume and share online. By applying strategies like the 5 C's of critical consuming and the ESCAPE framework, we can become more responsible and informed digital citizens. As students and future leaders, we have the power to challenge misinformation, promote truth, and contribute to a more healthy and more informed society. Thank you so much for your attention, and hopefully this inspires you to take action in your daily interactions with information. I'll see you later.